Hello there. In this video, we'll be converting this, I think it's like a 91 to 93 first gen Dodge to a 47 RH, which has overdrive and lockup. It originally comes with the A518 automatic transmission, which is pretty much the same transmission as a 47 RH, except it doesn't have lockup. So the main benefit is to swapping this transmission is to get lockup, which helps fuel mileage and it makes it way more fun to drive as well. For the parts needed, I'm going to go over here and show you. So here we have the new 47 RH ready to go, and the core of this transmission is actually the exact same trans as the A518. All you do is you change a couple little internal components to allow it to have lockup, but if you send your trans out to get rebuilt, the trans shop is able to make the RH trans, the A518 into an R8 47 RH with lockup. And in this truck, the body that I'm building this for decided to go with a billet input and a billet intermediate shaft, and a triple disc converter, as well as a billet flex plate. And then we'll be putting in a manual shifter so he can shift it himself, as well as putting lockup and overdrive on switches on the shifter. In addition to doing all this, you need the second gen Dodge 94 to 02 trans adapter plate, as the first gen Dodge trans plate is 1.2 inches wide, and the lockup converter, because it's a larger converter, uses this second gen adapter, which is 2.4 inches wide. So that will change your drive shaft length. So the front drive shaft will need to be lengthened and the back drive shaft will need to be shortened. My hope is that with only the inch and a half, inch and a quarter difference, is there'll be enough slip in both drive shafts that we won't have to extend or change them. And with this trans plate, it changes the location of the starter as well. So I'm going to need to put a second gen Dodge starter in it. Looks good. Haven't really done this before, so I'm kind of seeing how it goes. In addition to the 47 RH trans, while I put it in there, I'll be deleting the heat exchanger, which is down here. The purpose of the heat exchanger is to take engine coolant and warm up the transmission fluid, which helps it on cold weather conditions. Now, I've done this to a couple automatic trucks, and I haven't had any issues in the winter. In my mind, this is a piece of shit because it warms the trans up, and heat is one of the main killers of automatic transmissions. You want a cool transmission. So that'll be bypassed and deleted. And the factory trans cooler is behind here. It's kind of hard to see. I don't know if I can show it to you. Oh, it's down there. It's a little PV1. You don't need to get the TCI shifter to do this swap. However, we're doing it just because it makes it a lot more enjoyable to drive, and this is kind of a street fun summer truck. You can retain the original factory shifter, and the computer will still command overdrive, and the trans should function as intended. However, you need to have lockup on a switch to command it yourself. So we'll be wiring that all in, and I'll be showing that. So before I put the new trans in, I figured it'd be good to do a side-by-side between the old trans and the new 47 RH. You can see dimensionally and externally, these are the exact same transmissions. There's going to be a different casting number as well, but internally they're all the same. You'll have a different plug, of course. So this only has 2 wires going to it, which is for overdrive, and this has 3 wires going to it, which is for overdrive and lockup. And tail housing's the same, mounts are all the same. Come around to the front. The input shaft has it's a little short bastard like that, and then the 47 RH, you can I'll pull this back to the side and try to keep this thing clean. Has that little nub in the front there, which if I remember right, fluid comes through the middle, and that's for lockup. Going over to the converters here, you can see this is the non-lockup converter. It's a stock converter. There's the triple disc converter, which is much wider. And then for the ring gear or flex plate, flex plates are dimensionally identical. You can interchange them, so you don't have to go and get a different flex plate to run the lockup trans. This one's an aftermarket billet one, just because this trans has billet shafts and the truck will be making some more horsepower. For the trans adapter plate, we have the 47 old one here, non-lockup. You can see it's just pretty much flat on the back side, whereas the lockup one is dished to allow the deeper converter. Then you'll have, of course, the different starter. This is a big first gen one, the clock's different, and has a larger motor. So progressing along in the trans install, something to note is the 47RH with the second gens, they have a transfer case that seals on a lip seal inside here. So make sure you take that out. So there's no lip seal, as the 205 transfer case seals on with the flange face here because of using a coupler in between. Another thing to note is because the trans is pushed back another 1.25 inches longer, the mount no longer lines up. As mentioned earlier in the video, the 1.2 inches from having the lockup converter ends up messing up quite a bit of things, and one of them being the trans mount. So this is the plate that's kind of sandwiched in between the transmission and the cross member, and then there's 2 rubber bushings over here that are completely disintegrated, but they go over here, 2 bolts go through them, and then that bolts to the lower cross member. And from the factory, there's some adjustability in here, and the automatic trans ends up over here, and I probably the manual trans ends up over here. And the lockup transmission is, because of the 1.2 inches extra, for the places like this, ends up, if this is the whole center, ends up kind of about over here. This is 1.5, I'm giving myself a little extra leeway, so this, of course, is a problem. So something you can do to get around this would be to cut straight 2 slots, so then you can bolt this up. And then have some more adjustability, but then of course that's going to make it weak, so then you're going to want to plate the top like this and then plate the bottom, and that should make it strong enough. Or if you have a CNC table like I do, you just make a piece to bolt it up. And fuck. Aha, that was totally intentional. Just forget about that. Oh, yeah, so you have a CNC table. Boom. Makes it easy to go. Yep. It puts that out of the shot here. So, I can sell these on my website for 150 USD, and depending on what I end up getting price on for bushings, I can possibly include them for the same price or a little bit extra, and then you have a brand new piece. I didn't include this mainly because I don't want to have to bend it, and it also makes the shape of these for cutting them out in mass production awkward. I think this is for the skid plate. Now, if you really wanted that, you could cut it off the old one and then weld it onto this one. Cut a little square piece. But for purpose of brevity and material savings, I'm gonna just leave it like this. So we'll go see how it fits. Here's the trans mount installed. You can see it just makes it inside these slots here. Now, next go around, you could probably just take a little notch out of here, but otherwise the bolt's still clear, fine. Fits in there good. Decided not to put the transfer case skid plate in, but it might be enough bolts to just put it back in there if you'd like. Nice and sturdy. Coming out of the front of the first gen, here the trans cooler that these trucks come with is woefully inadequate. And also, in order to fit the TCI shifter mount, I have to take off the factory trans cooler lines because it gets in the way of the cable. So you have to run AN line the whole way. So I don't want to just run AN line to the factory trans cooler. So I'm going to put in a a B&M trans cooler. This is the part number right here. So in the middle of the install for the trans cooler, I've got the fittings here that go into the trans. And these are 1/4 inch MPT on one side and -8 on the other side, or 8 JIC. And you can see, despite having a nice 3/8 hose on it, it ends up necking down when it gets to the 1/4 inch fitting. So it's always important to look at every fitting you get and to drill it out so it's the same diameter the whole way through. Because what's the point in having that big hose if it just necks down like this at the end? Something to look at when you're doing the trans cooler install. So I'm going to go over the completed trans cooler install. It's pretty tight behind here to fit it. I made a little bracket that came back and down and bolted to the trans cooler. It's kind of tucked back there. And I had to notch out, it's behind here, I had to notch out part of the rad cooler so I can fit the fittings, while also being able to get other bolts up here. And it's pretty tight in between the rad and the intercooler. Not enough that I'm like worried about it hurting, but if you got anything bigger like thicker than this one, it won't work. So maybe even a taller but skinnier transcooler would work better as well. So I routed it through the original hole. I put some hoses on here for rub protection. Wire loom would also work as well. Routed it down underneath the motor mount and in between the engine, and then come on down here. So to clear the shifter cable, I have a 45-degree fitting, and you have to have it pointed upwards. And then this is a 1/4 inch MPT to -8. And then back here, where are we at? I have the same thing, a 45 degree -8, and then that line, I had it a little extra long, so I just kind of routed it like that, and that line goes up and to the front there. Just make sure to zip tie it nicely, make sure it's not going to rub anything, and leave you stranded with a leaky hose. Just got the drive shaft back from the drive shaft shop. I had to take off about 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, which puts it right in the middle of the travel for the slip yoke. The slip yoke has about 3 inches of travel, so of course after the trans swap it would put it on the, so it has no more distance to compress. So it was only 150 bucks to get it shortened, and I replaced one of the U-joints and re-greased the other one since it was good. So there's another cost for the build. So I'm going to cover modifying the TCI shifter to put the switches into it. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it always helps to see how some other guy does it. So you're going to want to remove this side cover, and inside here there's a cavity for where you can fit the switches. So for the switches, I got these kind of small ones. The big thing is having it wired like this makes it really easy to fit in there. The previous one I did, I had terminals on it and it was a pain in the ass. So I'm hoping that this makes it a lot easier to use. All right, so I've got the switches loosely fitted up inside here. One thing to make sure with whatever switches you're using that they're going to be flush when you put them in. Otherwise the cover won't go down nicely. The other thing is I marked a line which goes off the center of the hole to the back of the shifter. So when I go and put the plate back on, I'm just going to make that line, mark about dead center, and drill my hole. I might make a second reference line for this over here so I can kind of find out. But make the holes a little bit bigger so you have a little more wiggle room. It's helps it out. Also, this top switch fits awesome, and all the wires will tuck in nicely behind here, but the bottom switch gave me some trouble, so I had to go and file it down, as well as take a die grinder and grind out this inner piece a little bit right there to help fit the bottom switch. Here's the finished switch install. You have the wires routed nicely. That one with the little shave at the top, and then I probably could have made the hole a little bit lower. I ran into trouble with this one, where I had to grind down the top of the switch just a little bit, and pulled it on, looking nice. Nice positive sound for engaging the switches. Now, some of you may wonder why I didn't go with the switch shifter that that by TCI already offers. The trouble with that is that they're momentary buttons, so they're hold on and then let go, and it's not engaged anymore. So that's why you have to do switches. So here we have the completed shifter stand with shifter. If you're gonna have to make your own, how I started off is I made a plate. This one's 5x5 with a 4x4 circle, and I made the plate first, drilled the holes in the floor because it's pretty hard to fit a drill around this pipe in the center, and then I made the plate for the top, welded this straight to the plate, made it so it has some clearance for the chair, and then I cut this at an angle because you're going to want to angle the shifter down because the cable has to go through the floor at a low spot, and you don't want to put it through the dash. So in the middle of the shifter cable install here, something important if you're a guy that doesn't like to read instructions is for installing the cable, you have to have the shifter in first, and then you have to make sure that when you put this little piece in here that it goes in nicely, in and out, so it's not binding. So this one goes in and out nice. I could actually probably do a half turn out of it, and the half turn ends up too much, I think. Oh no, it's nice. Yeah, nice and loose. You want to have it like that. For routing the cable, they give you a 5-foot cable and it just barely fits. And this is about where I came out to be the best place to route it. This is about up right directly in line with the bracket for the gas pedal and to the right. I'm going to put some grommets over that to help seal it up, but I made the hole a little bit bigger to help angle the line down. And then coming around the front here. The cable comes through there and it routes in between the block and the starter and underneath, and it fit just perfect. But you're gonna have to watch out. This is where I lucked out with where the shifter is. If I went any taller or any further back, the cable wouldn't have worked. So for wiring the switches in, you have OD and lockup, and they are ground switched. So you merge together the two wires off, one wire off of each switch, and then you put it to ground, which would be the body of the shifter here, is what I did. And then you have two other wires, so you'll have overdrive and lockup. And you'll be wiring to the 47RH plug, which is a 3-pin plug. Green is key on power. I'm going to try and see if I can get this off the original PCM. And then orange is for lockup and brown is for overdrive. So I routed that up nicely down the shifter, and then I drilled the hole and I run a grommet through here, and then I'll be wiring the plug in down on the bottom of the shifter. Well, this thing put up a fight, but it's finally done. The 47RH swap, contrary to what I might have said at the beginning of the video, ended up being quite a bit of work. You can see it under there looking all nice and shiny. Excuse the quality, it's kind of late right now, but a bunch of little things, and otherwise it's great and a ton of fun to drive. And little thing that I should mention is the 4x4 shifter. With the trans moved back a little bit, ends up contacting the floor, so I had to cut the stick off and push it forwards so that now it doesn't contact the cab anymore. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to finish the video using the first gen. After cleaning my garage, the owner shortly after came and picked the truck up. So I have my 9812 valve here with the TCI conversion as well. Just to show you a different install, but otherwise it's pretty similar for the first gen. You can change things up, like I put the trans cooler in the box here and have a remote fan on it, but otherwise everything's pretty similar. I do sell these shifter stands. This is a older prototype model, as well as I make tubular trans cross members. So if you're doing something like this, it makes it a lot easier. This is also a prototype. All the prototypes kind of go on this junker truck here. That all aside, let me know if you enjoyed the video. I try to be as informative and concise as possible, but between figuring things out and filming and just trying to get stuff done in a timely manner, things can get lost in translation or not covered as well. Let me know, and I always answer and look at every question I have in the comments. Contact me on Instagram also if you want a more one-on-one discussion. And I hope to see you in another video. Subscribe, like, check me on IG and follow me, shoot me a follow there. Check my website out, and appreciate the watch. Thanks.